Hello there, inquiring minds. Welcome to the first in a series of short videos on fountain pen related topics that may well be a series limited to one. We'll see. No boring guitars, no long-winded intros, laced with obscure video cutaway references, just a shorty video on a fountain pen topic. And today's topic is baby's bottom. Baby's bottom is that annoying random skipping you get from some fountain pens, usually the ones you paid more than a mortgage payment for. It happens on many fountain pen nibs, usually those that are broader in line thickness, and is the result of a slight over-polishing of the nib. As a consequence, the tipping material on the nib ends up looking like a baby's bum, with the bum's crack forming a gap between the ink in the slit and the paper itself, keeping the ink from flowing onto the page. I've had a few nibs like this, and I've solved this issue fairly easily in just a couple of minutes. But heed my warning, do not try this at home. I am a trained professional. Admittedly, I'm not trained in anything related to fountain pens, but nevertheless, do not try this on any pen you value enough to start legal proceedings against me if you fail.
That's right, I lawyered up, you little bitch.
And if you're going to sue anyone, sue my colleague just an hour north of me, Dr. Stephen Brown, as I stole this whole routine from him. Thanks, Dr. Brown.
Doc? Don't say a word. Doc.
So let's get down to it. My new Ranga Abby something.
Abby who? Abby normal.
Has a touch of baby's butt. So we need to eliminate that little cleft between the cheeks by removing some tipping material. Now that tipping material is generally comprised of a very hard iridium alloy, and it takes some hefty abrasive to remove it. Professional nibmeisters will use a grinding wheel or a Dremel tool or something dangerously destructive like that. But we're going to do this manually. You'll need a set of micromesh abrasives. I got this set of 7 pads for around $18 Canadian at Lee Valley Tools. They range in coarseness or grit from the very gritty 1800 grit to the not so gritty 12,000 grit.
What is a grit anyways?
It's made out of corn.
You gonna eat it or not?
And you need some water, which I have in this syringe. And then you need some patience. I called my technique of making a Pen BBS nib right wetter the 7 strokes to inky happiness. That's where you take a Pen BBS nib, usually the fine ones, they're typically very dry, and open it up by giving it slight pressure in 7 strokes. And it makes them very wet indeed. But Dr. SBRE Brown's technique is the 8 strokes of infinity. This is where you take your baby butt nib and give it 8 infinity loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 horizontally and 8 vertical. 5, 6, 7, 8 on the progressive micro mesh grits, starting from the 1800 and finishing with the 12,000. So let's start by demonstrating some of the skipping that I'm getting on this nib. Sometimes it works okay, sometimes it doesn't work okay. I wrote for about 5 minutes with it last night, and it seemed to write okay, but every so often I'd try to write the word the, and I'd get a skip at the top of the line. So we're going to start with the 1800 grit. Put a little water on it. And it's best to do this with the pen inked up so you can give it a test after each micromesh. And we're going to give it some figure 8s using the same angle that I normally use of my pen to the page, and just with light pressure. Don't grind it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're not going to get ink flow, of course, but I'm feeling that there's a lot of feedback now because that coarse grit has really roughed up that surface, but it's removing material as we do that. So now we're going to use the 2400 grit. Then we're going to move up to the 3200 grit. Should get progressively smoother on the page. And then we're into the 4000 grit. And we move up to the 6000 grit. And then the 8000 grit. This is the penultimate grit before we get to the really ultra smoothing with the 12,000. And so you should be feeling a bit of feedback, but it should be fairly smooth. Now at this point, I'll want to polish off some of that feedback, but just leave enough that I feel comfortable with on the page. I like a little bit of feedback from my fountain pens, not so much from my viewers, but from my fountain pens.
Ooh, burn!
And then we go to the 12,000 grit, which is the smoothing and polishing. I just give it a little bit of a rotation at the end there, just to knock off any burrs. And we'll prime that feed. Now the other thing that happens when you're polishing, that you're knocking off material on the end there, and so that grit gets caught between the tines, and so can cause ink flow issues. So I just take the thinnest spark plug gapping tool, 0.002 inches, 0.051 millimeters, and just put it in the breather hole right there and just floss the nib, just like that. Absolutely no issues whatsoever. Yeah, so that's still got a good deal of feedback on it. So I might just give it a little bit more of the 12,000. Just to polish it up a little bit. Again, you can go a little bit further with the smoother grits because they're not as aggressive. Be very careful with the heaviest grits as they take off a lot of material. Nice. The ink is still a little bit thin because of all the water, but this is writing like a charm now. A snake charm. So it's smooth as a baby's butt now, without the crack. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little shorty. Let me know in the comments. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.